Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Ms. Allen, you've appeared previously before this committee, and you said something I'm going to quote back to you, quote, "The threat of retailers' escalation of fees and fines places Canada's primary producers at risk as food processors purchase in excess of 40% of Canada's farm gate output," end quote. I'm wondering if you can tell us, has grocery price inflation caused food processors to purchase less?
Thank you very much for the question. I do not believe that what we're seeing take place in the marketplace has resulted in food producers purchasing less farm gate output. I don't have any data to support that. In fact, what's happened since the pandemic is that we've seen quite a bit more volume because people are at home, cooking more at home, drive more volume throughout the supply chain or the food value chain. So my concern for farm gate output is the same for many of the businesses in the value chain. They also are faced, according to reports that I'm receiving, with incredible pressures on everything from transportation of their goods through to fertilizer, through to the impact of the carbon tax, labor, all of those issues. Many of them are occurring throughout all the value chain. And if we are going to make the most of the opportunity ahead of us as a country, we need to address and understand the circumstances for each value chain member and its relationship between its both selling and production and how that product gets to market. We're not always in control of the pricing and whether or not we can control whether or not our product gets to market efficiently.
Thank you. And you just noted some of the limitations that food processors face, but I'm wondering if you could also comment on what kind of limitations food processors face when they're dealing with large grocery chains in the form of grocer fees and fines.
Certainly, and I'll try to bring it back to the small and medium-sized enterprise and the usually the multi-generational families that are running them. So imagine you've done your best to produce a lot of goods according to a forecast provided to you by a retailer, and you have a trade agreement in place that states how much you will deliver and when. Those are delivered. You're not in control of when the truck gets there because that's a third party that does that. Also, your slot time in the warehouse is not something that you can control. So let's say that isn't perfectly aligned. And by the end of the time of delivery and the invoice that's provided, by the time that invoice is settled, usually with cash terms extending longer and longer as retailers prefer to hold on to the cash longer as part of their cash preservation strategy. By the time you get settlement for that payment or for that invoice, you're not always sure of what that payment will look like. So you can't count on your own cash flow planning and your own investment in your business to cover your expenses because you can't be certain that the $100, for example, that you've invoiced a retailer will be settled as $100 with all of those fees and fines and penalties eroding the settlement amount. You could be faced with 80 cents on that $1. So that makes it very difficult for small players to play. That's the environment that we are in. And then layer on all of the other environmental and economic factors and regulatory factors and taxes and access to competitively priced inputs. It's incredibly difficult for producers to have any level of certainty in their business dealings, and that's why we need the code.
Thank you. And as you know, I've also been a big proponent of the code for a number of years now. And one of the concerns that was raised, and you did touch on it a little bit earlier, was whether or not the code should include a completely transparent dispute resolution mechanism. And we just have about 30 seconds left. So I'm just wondering if you can touch on that and where we are in that process with the code.
Certainly. Where we are is relative to the major milestones that we need to achieve in the coming months. First is a broad-based industry consultation. So the code will go out for consultation. It will be in the marketplace for up to 30 days, where we're soliciting the feedback of all stakeholders to ensure that we haven't overlooked any major item that needs more consideration, and also get other feedback on the principle-based nature of the code. We also are looking at an implementation date of January 2023. So after we gain the feedback from the consultation, it'll then be incumbent upon the steering committee to consider the dispute resolution mechanism, which is in its formation right now, and we have a very inclusive process that have retailers at the table, which was really important to have an industry-led solution and have a dispute resolution mechanism that allows for expedient resolution of issues, and for a mechanism that identifies recurring themes. So in 18 months, the code can be revisited and improved upon, and there's a continuous improvement cycle.